It is the beginning of the end of the Pokemon hate community. You're seeing people getting millions of views for talking about how bad Pokemon Legends ZA Day 1 when the vast majority of the player base is having a great time. There is a huge dissonance between people who hate Pokemon and want to see it fail and are engaging with this negative content versus actual players. And that dissonance is leading to more and more people realizing that most of the people complaining do not and never had any interest in engaging with the software in any way, shape, or form. And I would argue this has always been the case. Even back in the day, you would see people spurg about Pokemon who had never even touched a game, but now with Legend ZA, we are seeing this instance of this very, very well received game getting attacked by random YouTubers, by getting demonized on Metacritic. People are like spamming like negative reviews on that website. You're seeing people like fake like glitch videos. You're seeing people say the game is unfinished. You're seeing people say the game is like just awful, it's terrible, that Digimon's way better. Like you're seeing people like bend over backwards to complain about Pokemon for views. And this is becoming more and more apparent, like with every major release. Like, you can't simply sit there and say that, like, well, Power World is better than this because Power World is a couple of years old at this point. Like, even if you thought Power World was better than this, like, even if you're like a low IQ troglodyte who has never played a Pokemon game in your life, like, even if you're that fucking stupid, even if you like rode the short bus to school and ended up somehow failing your impossible to fail classes, like, even if you're that stupid, even then, like, you have to contend with the fact that Pokemon Legends ZA is a completely new game that is not rehashy, that looks great, that plays fantastic, and is a completely new experience. It's something that, like, that's very interesting because the classic cope that, like, boomers try and tell you is that Pokemon is the same thing over and over and over again. First of all, that wasn't true to begin with, but also, secondly, it is the Legends game specifically defy that archetype. Legends Arceus is very different from mainline games, and Legends EA in turn is completely different than Legends Arceus. That is what we're seeing here. That is what we've seen. That's what's happened, and it's just impossible to deny it at this stage. Everybody is spurging out. Everybody is freaking. Like, everybody is doing everything they possibly can to keep the cope going, to keep the negativity just pushing forward, trying desperately to downplay this major IP. And all of it increasingly is falling flat. People are trying desperately to shit talk, like, Gen 8, you know, Scarlet and Violet, and that's just not sticking anymore because anybody who's played those games know that they're great. So again, what we're seeing now is just something like very similar to what happened with the collapse of Gen 1ing back in like 2013 or so, where people have complained about Pokemon so extensively that they've pushed the absolute limits of what they can get away with, that hardcore fans are no longer taking them seriously and are now openly engaging with each other, talking about how much they love the games and how great it is. Like, the people complaining about Pokemon Legends EA have cried wolf so many times that nobody is taking them seriously. Like, after hyping up something as derivative and uninspired as Power World, like, this is the natural conclusion of Pokemon hate. And this is not even the first time this has happened. We've seen this happen with the Gen 1ers back in the day. And in fact, a lot of Pokemon hate today still has a lot of like roots in Gen 1ing. Like, how many people have we seen on social media advocate for this idea that like there are only 150 Pokemon, that the series peaked with Gen 1 and that it fell off after that. Like obviously these are boomers who played Pokemon when it was a fad and thought it fell off after that and kind of moved on and didn't engage with it. And they're upset that people still enjoy it because no, it's something we only played to be popular. Like that's the mindset that these people have. They have no ability to discern the reality of their situation. They have no ability to talk about what has transpired. They can't adequately criticize these games because their criticisms are so empty and so shallow. They really do. They unironically like talk about the graphics when talking about Pokemon. Like, oh no, why don't these games look better? Like Legends EA unironically looks way better than something like Red Dead Redemption 2. Like it looks way better than Ghost of Your Toy. It looks way better than all of its competition. And you know why? Because it has a vibe, it has a personality, it has a unique style. You know, People keep like complaining about the graphics, but they don't really think about like the Pokemon aesthetic and their tone they're going for. Like when you think about like Pokemon's tone and when you think about like how they want to present themselves and like what people like about the brand, like it makes sense to make an IP that focuses on having unique character models and unique unique designs. Like it's not like having good graphics goes beyond like simply having like being realistic or being hyper detailed. Like Pokemon designs are universally appealing, fun, and interesting to look at. And that's the core appeal of the franchise, is finding Pokemon that you enjoy and using them for your team. And that's been like this amazing formula that's endured for 30 years. Like the idea that Pokemon has bad graphics because like, oh, it's not like it's just a giant cup, and it always has been. You're seeing more and more people try and say the Game Boy Advance games look bad as well, and that is just so laughably stupid that it does need to get called out. And we do need to start like addressing this. Like a game looking good goes far beyond having like huge environments, detailed worlds, and hyper realistic graphics. It has to be something that people want to engage with and play. And Pokemon Legends EA has proved that in spades, that it is an extremely popular game that people were very excited about and are engaging with. There's just no denying that at this point. And at this stage, we're in this really weird situation where like the pretendos are losing control of the narrative. Like they really thought that they would be able to boycott Pokemon and that they would be able to drive this brand into irrelevancy and bully fans, but we're like they are learning firsthand that you can't boycott a product if you were never their customer to begin with. This is that's the reality of this situation. Something that a lot of these boomers really need to wrap their heads around. Whenever they spurg out about Nintendo and the Pokemon Company, is that like if you don't buy these games, if you don't play these games, you really don't have a leg to stand on when it comes to criticizing them. You will never, ever, ever be able to gaslight people into thinking Digimon or Power World is better than Pokemon if you don't accept very real facts about Pokemon. Like if you can't accept their release schedule, if you can't accept like how well integrated the generations are with each other. When you can't like acknowledge the success of the TCG or the merchandise or the anime, when you can't like accept that Pokemon is successful for a reason, like you're never ever ever going to convince anybody to not engage with the brand. Like it's just completely fallen apart and really needs to be called out for what it is. Like the Pokemon hate community is nothing more than a grift.